Welcome to the Hoka IRONMAN VR 24 Master Coach Challenge. They are off. We are on the Kona course. Of course, this section of the course are athletes starting at Hapuna Beach and riding back towards town. Oh, I take that back. We are doing the beginning part of the course. Earlier videos, I thought we were going to be later on. This is the pier. So our athletes getting underway here as we see all of our age group athletes under the watchful eyes of their master coaches. We've got Sarah Cometto at the bottom of the screen. We've got Sandy Brown at the top of the screen and Juliet Hockman center screen. So we have their master coaches watching on as well. We will bring them in to provide guidance not only to their athletes, but also to all of you. That's good stuff. So tell me this, Matt. Sarah said typically you do 1,000. Number one, why that distance, and what will this 400-meter swim tell you that's different than what a traditional 1,000 benchmark swim would tell you?
Yeah, 1,000 develop or really forces a sense of pacing. We actually tend to do two benchmarks, 1,000 and then 100, to see what the speed is like. And obviously at the start of the year, you have a little bit of insight over the more sort of muscular endurance, what you can sustain over 1,000 yards or meters, and then the 100 provides a little bit of insight on where your top end speed is.
How often should an athlete, if they have access to both pool and open water, what kind of mix do you recommend?
It's great if you can do like one swim a week. You know, let's say you're swimming 3 or 4 days a week, do one of those swims in open water. If you have a group that you can do it with, it's great to swim in a group, because then you kind of get that sense of jostling around a little bit and maybe a little bit of body contact. And you can also practice, drafting. As you know, if you get close behind the swimmer in front of you, don't tap their feet, because that's very annoying. But it's like a race car. You can get a draft and you can actually go a few seconds per 100 faster on somebody's feet than you can if you're the lead swimmer.
So 200 hard straight into 450s with approximately, if I'm guessing, about 5 seconds rest on that interval. What's the strategy behind this session, Lance?
She's got a pretty mean coach, huh? Don't you think? Juliet and I have a long history of prescribing workouts for Juliet that actually scare the pants off her, and she takes about a day or so to process it and wrap her mind around it. And then she always brings her A game to these key workouts. So generally speaking, 400 is one of my favorite distances as a coach. It's 5 to 7 minutes, 8 minutes, which is long enough to test endurance, but you're still swimming slightly anaerobically, and it forces you to really focus on maintaining form and technique as you gradually fatigue through the second half. So in this case, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to educate her on how to take the next step or bridge the gap between where she was for that distance and where she might be able to get to.
All right, now with Sarah underway, do you encourage her in these opening couple hundred meters to sort of feel out the pace, or is she going to be looking at her watch to make sure she's not going out too fast?
We're training so very much feel, and this is actually a great situation here with for the viewers, because Sarah went out and felt really smooth and calm, and yet really overpaced the front half of this run. And that's a classic component. In fact, the theme of this week is knowledge, and that sense of awareness that we're talking about.
What I try to emphasize for my athletes to try to build into each and every workout session that they do. Start slowly and build throughout the workout. And as the goal on the bike today for Sandy is to actually build in thirds. A lot of athletes and coaches will have their athletes have kind of divide a workout or a session in halves. So, first half is a certain effort and then the second half is faster. I find that if you build it in thirds, you have a much better chance of really hitting those increasing targets as you go throughout the workout.
So walk us through it, Lance. She's 400 in sort of ins and outs, at pace, under pace, over pace type thing?
Yeah, that's the idea. So earlier in the show, Matt was talking a lot about pacing and pace work and the feedback that you get from the pool, and we were doing a little bit of that work with her in the pool. And essentially what we're trying to do is create structure in a workout like this where she can learn very specific pacing in an ongoing or sustained effort. So Juliet actually went out onto the waterfront and pre-measured off her 400-meter segments. You'll see little chalk marks occasionally, even where she's got her, shift to gear moments. And the outcome that you want from this knowledge block and the learning from something like this is having an intrinsic sense of what that movement feels like at a given pace.
I have another question that actually, this one is super interesting to me, and I'm curious to see how our master coaches handle it. This coach from big to little, this question: when coming out of T2, entering the run portion, being a run walker, there's always a lot of excitement with the crowd, and I always find myself going too hard for the first 2 miles because I'm ignoring my watch. How do I ease back so I don't blow up on the run? Now, my answer would be don't ignore your watch, but coaches, how do you answer that question?
I'll lead here because I just want to jump on one thing as well, walking. I think walk breaks, smart integrated walk breaks for many athletes are really underrated. And I think it's a great tool to use to manage terrain and also make sure that you're running. We have a thing that we say, run as well as you can for as long as you can, as often as you can. And so we don't want to have declining posture, form, or foot speed. And so many athletes just run themselves into a ditch because they think I cannot walk. And so I think it's a really smart approach globally. As you come out of T2, I think that the first few kilometers of the run are going to be about setting the tone. And so we have a lot of focus. If you don't get your posture right after being down in time trial position, the body being obviously sort of folded over on itself, you need to get tall and you need to actually set the tone. If you don't establish good posture early and get to good form with nice foot speed, it's going to be very hard to find that later in the race.